Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 54.
Wherever life drops that ball, whatever is in front of you at the moment is the challenge, and to not fight against it or wishing it was some other way.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Todd Pickering. Todd is an artist, musician, photographer, and tree hugger. He teaches with the Latino photography program and the Artists in School. Both are supported by Gallery Route 1 in Point Trees Station, photography excursions in nature, and he studied at the San Francisco Art Institute. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's really fun having a fellow artist on. And I was teasing Todd about being a tree hugger because my husband and sons like to hammock camp. So, different type of tree hugging, but living in nature. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, yeah. I studied at the San Francisco Art Institute, studied sculpture, actually, and then it sort of led into photography, but I'd always been doing photography throughout my life, from backpacking and just wanting to bring back the beauty of what I was seeing. But it really gelled when I was at the Art Institute, and I got very serious about it, and I've been doing it ever since. I've been photographing out where I live in Point Reyes, California, for about 30 years now. I take people out on hikes and teach them about photography, but it's usually an excuse to just get people out and really get them jazzed about the environment, which is sort of my motivation for all the educational things I do. I really want to get people out and excited and away from the sort of the weight of the classroom. So I do that with kids. Also, I teach with the Artists in the Schools program out here. I work with grade schoolers, usually 7th and 8th grade, doing things around nature, but also with photography.
That is great.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about in that. So, yeah.
And Todd said he lives in a really beautiful part up above, an hour away from San Francisco, right off the coast there. Lots of fun places to take photographs of.
Very visited, but also very amazing that we're so close to the city, but you feel like you're in another world out here. I'm actually looking out over the cow pastures right now, and so there's working farms out here.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, Todd, do you want to tell us about your personal educational experience?
Yeah, so I'll just start really kind of quickly through my early education. Is that I always felt that the classroom held me back. I felt that the sort of rigors and the form of the teaching in high school was just so halting. So I was never really a big fan of it. I was always looking to the hills and getting out, and art definitely found me and was the way that I could express that extra energy that was bubbling inside me. I actually went off and had a little bit of a profession early on. I went to a technical school, studied dental technology, and I was a dental technician, and I had a lab, and I decided that the art aspect of me just kept calling, so I decided to go to art school, went to the San Francisco Art Institute in San Francisco.
Oh, that's great.
And it was a thriving atmosphere. I mean, it really just was the right place for me. And I got my bachelor's, and then I started my master's degree, and I got about halfway through, and I got a job offer photographing for a company, and I had to take it, so I just left and went off and did that, and then started my career as a photographer. And within that, I've done teaching. I actually went to get my teaching credential for teaching in standard schools, and again, because I thought it was the thing I should do, and I studied at Sonoma State, and I started doing my student teaching at a high school, and the atmosphere was so oppressive and it just felt, for lack of a better word, it felt diseased. Like it just wasn't functioning. And believe me, I love teachers. I love teachers. They're some of the most amazing people with tons of commitment and good hearts and energy, but I just think for some reason like a lot of our systems, it's gotten mired down in the bureaucracy and politics around it, and teachers are really having a tough go with the testings. And so I actually just stopped. I said, this is not for me. I'm going to continue making art. And then other teaching forms started revealing themselves to me. I had an opportunity to teach at a school in Napa, California called Oxbow. I taught at the summer program, and we would have students from 13 to 17 come in for 3 weeks at a time, and they would live there and get to make art the whole time. They had to come up with a project, and then we would assist them in making whatever they wanted to work on. That's where when the light bulb went off for me that the only way to educate is full immersion into a subject, not this sort of 50-minute, if you're lucky, more like a half an hour tapping into mathematics. I love the school systems that are doing, where you spend 3 months on math.
Yeah.
Or, this is where true learning is, and especially in the arts. And I think it's a great example of how it works. You can't dabble in it. I think that's why music schools are so good. You really need to live it and be playing different instruments and talking about it at lunchtime and practicing with your friends outside of class. And art is like that. And I think if we can give that to kids at a younger age, it's going to stay with them. If you sit with science for a few weeks at a time, you really get to understand all its connections rather than just the right answers on a test.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that kind of education. So I had a great opportunity there at Oxbow, and their program during the semester, the students stay for a whole semester. So they really, and they get high school credit. So it's a really, so the listeners out there, if their kids are artist type, it's a really incredible program. It's a great program.
Do they take students from all over, or just
yeah?
Area?
We get students from all over the world. They have, I think, half of it is scholarships, so people that can't afford there because I think it's quite expensive.
Oh, wow.
And you're fed. It's full residency, so you have your 3 meals a day, and it's beautiful studios. It's really great.
We'll have to check that out.
And then the Artisan Schools program that I teach with through Gallery Route 1, I work with 7th and 8th graders doing projects around using photography, but it's not specifically photography. Photography is actually a funny thing to teach in the arts because it's so ubiquitous and we all have it on our cell phones, and you can trip and fall and take a photograph. So how to teach that. And I usually try to integrate it with a larger project. So one of the things I do is it's called photo totems, where the kids pick an animal that they relate to, and then they do a self-portrait, and then they integrate the face of the animal with their face in Photoshop. And then I work with a poet that helps them with a poem about that animal and themselves.
Well, that's interesting.
I really find that these sort of circular conversations in art is a way to sort of sneak in the back door and get kids to learn things that they don't know that they're learning, as opposed to just saying, okay, here's the thing, do it, and you're done, and you check that off your list, which is what I see a lot of. I think it's very important to have a sort of full circle of conversation so that the information sort of sneaks up and bites them in the butt at the end, and they really get the lesson. So I do that also with my, please stop me, I can ramble on a lot about this.
No, keep going.
So I do that with adults also, and some kids, but when I take them out on hikes, a lot of people just want to learn about their cameras, but usually what happens by the halfway through the day is that they're learning other things. They're learning how to quiet down. One of your questions was about creativity, and can you teach creativity? And the way that I teach it is it takes a while. It's like if you're a painter, you can't just run into your studio and paint. You need to be there and, clean up the studio and dance around a little bit and drink a cup of coffee. And it takes time to get into the space where creativity can come. And that's the art of creativity, is learning the dance of how to open all the doors and the windows so all the creative juices can flow through. And that's what I do with people out in nature. They brought all their gear and they really want to know these answers, but I just kind of keep it quiet and I let the nature sort of soften them so that the creativity starts flowing through them. So that's
is that how you get them to kind of enjoy the art and photography process? Is just spending time like that?
Yeah, it's very important because it's, like I said, anybody nowadays can sort of slip and fall and take a good picture. The cameras are amazing. You can look at the back of the camera and go, oh, that looks nice, and do a print of it, and you're done. But the depth comes when you start to tap into your personal story and start to realize what your sort of iconography is in the world and what is it that you have to say. And that only comes from being quiet.
Yeah, that's interesting that you relate it to a story, art and photography, to that.
Yeah.
So
in other words, on one side of it, you're just making another commodity. If you're just going out and grabbing images and getting the thing to make a product, that's what you're getting. So I think the depth comes when you get something with, it's the unknown. It's the thing that is very personal to you in any form of art. We can all learn the techniques with practice, but find out the difficulty and the depth comes with sitting quiet enough to figure out what your own personal story is.
That's interesting. So how do you feel like your educational philosophies changed over time and with experience? And we talked about your personal experience, kind of felt like it was smothering. I mean, how has that changed as you've grown and taught and all of those things?
Well, I think that what I see is I see a hunger in a lot of people to have that extended time and depth. And I really feel it when I teach at the elementary school, because it is a public school. There's just no time. And I think that is just being reinforced time and time again, how I think it's really important to have extended time. And I think going into education, I saw it as what I knew, which was you get up as a teacher in front of the class and you tell them what you know, and then you test them on it.
Yeah.
And I think that the real beauty of education is when you see the individual. We all have such, and all teachers know this, there's so many different learning styles, that to have the extended time to really sit with a student and see that they're visual learners, or to understand that someone, has, like I had one art student who made an incredible sculpture. He worked with it for a while. I helped him on it and really excelled in it. And then we had a show that all the parents were going to come to, and I said, I want everyone to write a short statement about their piece. And he immediately, someone came and said, he's gotten really sick. He's got a really high fever, and he's not going to be able to do it. I found out later that he's incredibly dyslexic, and he was panicked about having to write about his piece because he couldn't.
Oh, wow.
And if I had known that, it wouldn't have been an issue. I would have said, hey, you can do an interpretive dance about your piece or something,
Yeah.
You don't have to write about it. And so I think that to have the times to learn the individual learning qualities of each student and cater to that, I think it's really important, because we're not all one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see it a lot. I hear more and more parents that are having, their kids are struggling because they have some sort of, let's just call it a learning
challenge or
challenge or something that, that it's just not being acknowledged. And I'm certain I did. It just was never named as a kid. And that's why the arts, for me, that's my way that I can communicate in the world.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of, there's a lot to talk about in it.
Yeah. So what is some of the best advice as an artist or a photographer that you've received, or even a teacher, I guess?
That I received?
Yeah.
Well, that's changing all the time. As I learn and as I change and get older, I'm 55 now, and I feel myself getting a little wisdom sneaking in and feeling calmer in life. And so what I thought was wise before has changed. my most, I'm going to just relate a quick story to you. My most recent one, a bit of information that I've gotten, I've just been kind of thinking about it in my mind all the time. I think it's really profound. And I'll tell a quick story. The story was related to me by someone else, and I'm going to say it in the way that I know it, so it's not verbatim. But in Thailand, there was this golf course that was built, a really high-end golf course, like a resort, and people paid a lot of money to play there. And the golfers were going out, and the monkeys were coming out of the forest and stealing the golf balls. And everyone was up in arms about it. People were paying good money to play golf, and the owners were upset, and they tried having sprinklers go off when the monkeys came, and they tried all these things to get rid of it. And nothing was working. So finally they come up with this idea. They're going to just have the rule that you have to play the ball where the monkey drops it.
That's interesting.
Lately that's what I've been kind of going by. It's like wherever life drops that ball, whatever is in front of you at the moment is the challenge, and to not fight against it or wishing it was some other way. So in my art making, I might have an intention to go out and photograph an eagle. Let's say I've been seeing an eagle out on a nest out in someplace, and I'm going out there every day of the week, and I haven't seen it again, and I'm getting upset. It's like, why am I getting this shot of this eagle? Instead of being upset about it, I just say, okay, well, that's not happening. What's here now? And turning my attention to that. And I find that release of that sort of control and falling into what is available is just giving me my results and my success in my photography has gone way up.
That's interesting.
Because of that.
Yeah.
It's opening the window to many possibilities. And so the words of wisdom is to play the ball where the monkey drops it. People can take that in their lives however they want, and I wish I knew the name of the person that I heard that from, but I can't remember. But it's a great story.
Yeah, that is. That can apply in a lot of different areas of our lives. So that is great.
Yeah, it's like if you have a student that has a certain learning challenge, then, well, that's where you are. And you don't wish them to be different.
Yeah.
Or try to get them to change to be something that they're not, And that just creates pain all around. And I think it's really important to, in a sense, this is another aspect. I want to live with as much kindness as I can. And that, I think with students, they need that. They really, they need to feel safe and loved and seen. And that's our system, our general system, just because of the time constraints, doesn't allow for enough of that.
Yeah.
It's amazing what teachers are able to pull off within what they have, because I personally know a bunch of teachers, and it's, they get tired.
Yeah.
It's hard for a teacher to last longer than 5 years these days. It's tricky.
exactly. Going on that same line about helping children kind of enjoy the process and stuff and the love that you can offer them, I mean, don't you find that within your realm of art and photography is that if you don't have that developed relationship, you end up with kids that can't quite enjoy the process or find their creativity when they're feeling kind of pressured? Does that make sense? No,
it does. If there's something that there's some sort of box they have to check off and feel they have to do, some of them just aren't going to resonate with it, especially with art. I mean, art is very particular in that where you really want to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Because
there's really no right way, right? Really no right way to... No. I mean, there's some things that are technical with any of the arts that are important to know, but that's just like vocabulary. You know, it's like if you want to be a writer, it's important to learn punctuation and all this sort of stuff. And same with any kind of art, you want to know which paintbrushes to use or what the techniques. And photography is very technical. It has a lot of that stuff. But once you get that out of the way, then, you know, I mean, your question about can you teach creativity, and I think you can't. I think all you can do is create the optimum situation for it to percolate and come to be. Yeah.
That's really, you can teach some techniques to allow that to happen or create the safety. I mean, it can come down to, you know, that the kids are fed, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
That they've had a good meal and they're feeling good in their bodies. You know, if you have kids that are uncomfortable, you're not going to get much out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, and speaking about kind of mechanics versus, you know, knowledge versus creativity, how important do you think it is to understand, like, art history, like the background of art, to be a good artist? Do you feel
I think it depends where you set up camp. You know, if you're going to be functioning in the art world and be in a gallery, or you're going to be in higher education where you need to converse, I think it's absolutely important, because you want to be able to, you're in that circle of conversation, and all those things come into play. You know, I sat in many classes, you know, of art history for hours, and I enjoyed it, and I looked at all the things you're supposed to look at, and finally I went to Italy on a trip, and I was blown away. I was seeing everything in slide form. To actually see the original objects was mind-blowing. And the fact that I had some knowledge about it beforehand and understanding of the individual artists and some of their history just made it more interesting.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't have to have it to make art. Like, I play music, and I'm a fairly unstudied musician. I taught myself and learned from some people and friends, but I have a couple CDs that I've done, and I'm happy with them. And so I think sometimes beginner's mind is good because you have the freedom and you don't have the weight of what's been done. It can actually stop you from attempting something.
You don't have to be like a particular artist. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well,
in
your naive way, you just won't say, oh, that's been done before. You'll just do it, and you'll enjoy it. So I think sometimes to not know the history of things allows you to just come out, and someone else will tell you. It's like, oh, that looks like so-and-so, and then you go, oh man, I wish I didn't know that now. I wish it could have just been my unique take on the world. But that being said, we are all connected, and there really, in some ways, in rare instances, there's original art, but most of it is somehow derived from something we've seen or experienced or felt or talked about, or, you know, it's hard to escape the connections.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're human and we have two eyes that look forward and we see the world in a certain way. Our uniqueness comes from, you know, our cultural makeup, and then what we've done to create our unique path. I have a very particular, my history, my personal history is very particular to me, and I think I have in my art a very particular look. It's very subtle, but it is me, and that's where you want to arrive to. But I love that I know something about. I love that I can converse about art. It just makes it more. It's fun.
Yeah, it adds a little more depth, maybe too.
Absolutely,
anyway.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly. Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors.
Hey fire starters, are you looking for a new way to listen to the Luminous Mind? Try listening on Stitcher. Haven't heard of Stitcher? Think of it as radio on demand. You can listen to the Luminous Mind anytime, anywhere. There is no downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Just stream your favorite podcasts such as the Luminous Mind. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad, and also from your favorite internet browser. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And make sure you rate and review the Luminous Mind so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.
Welcome back to the Luminous Mind with artist and photographer Todd Pickering. Well, you talked about kind of enjoying the moment of where you're at. What would you say some of the biggest obstacles you face are, and what have you learned from those?
Well, I would say being an artist in this world, financially it's difficult.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of just down to nuts and bolts of survival, but I made a conscious choice in my life that I knew I was going in the art direction, and I accepted. I said to myself, I'm going to accept whatever comes. So in some ways, back to that phrase, play the ball where the monkey drops it. I've accepted that. I accept those rules, but it is a challenge. So that's one. Obstacles are just personal. Creativity is sometimes, faith, I would say, is a giant role in art making. Is it worth even going and taking this hike to this spot that I think that I might get this photograph, the time in my life? Is it worth going out and doing that? Is it worth making I just did an open studio for the last 2 days where I printed up a bunch of work, spent a lot of time making frames and putting it out in the world. It's a lot of faith. So faith plays a huge part in it. You just got to say, okay, I don't know if this is going to work, but it's what I do, and so I'm going to continue to do it.
Well, I think it's interesting you talk about like the starving artist, because my husband loves photography too, but he's never been able to come to that, that idea of, those are some of the obstacles that you face when you decide to go that direction. So that's awesome.
And there is the starving artist, and I think if you make the choice consciously to do it, then it's almost like there's no question. You don't go back saying, I accept these rules. And then your life, like I don't have kids. I'm married, and fortunately my wife is very appreciative of what I do. And she struggles with me with the financial stuff, but she understands this is me. This is what I do. But I think, if I had kids and a mortgage and things, life might be very different. But it's because I've chosen the life I live, and it works. So I think one of the words of wisdom is to accept what you've chosen and don't struggle against it. If you find that it's not your path, then don't do it. I mean, it really isn't worth feeling and I have very few friends that I went to art school with that are still doing art.
They always have to move to something else, or maybe
something else. But the art plays a part of their life. There's art education's amazing. I think it
helps you see the world in a different way, if anything else.
It's creative thinking, and it allows you to just understand, that there's a beauty of this world that we need to keep touching into. And I think even there's a lot of artists in the tech world, that have made a marriage of that. They're using their creative minds and creating these things, and I think that's actually a good marriage because there is the financial support within that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting the mediums that you can go to anymore and still be part of art.
A lot of crossovers. The computers play a big part in the whole process. But I still keep my hand in sculptural things and things of the earth, that are a little bit more tactile because I miss it. And that's why I make my own frames. I just like working in the wood shop and at least having my thumb remember what it's there for. Rather than texting. It's for tool. I'm a tool user, and I surprised at how many students just don't know how to pick up a hammer.
Exactly.
It's kind of sad. I'm still in the analog world. I was born in 1960, so I was raised in running around making stuff out of wood and tools and enjoying that part of the tactile world. And now things are made where there's really no there. You're moving around the mouse. And believe me, I'm a big fan of technology. It allows me to do a lot of the things I do. But I really think it's important for us to keep a hand in the analog and the handmade. I think it's very important.
Yeah. I love that. So what are some successes that you've seen then, going off what you've chosen to do? I think once you don't enjoy it anymore, if you can go to work and really love it, why not do that? Do something that you really love versus, something that you feel like you have to do just because of money.
Well, that's why I made the choice I did. I was set. I had a successful business, and I was about 25 years old, and I looked at it and went, this is working, but it's not me. It's not what gets me excited every day. So that change in my life was very conscious and went at it full bore. And I've had a huge range of successes. I mean, I have an art rep in the city, San Francisco, and she sold work to Banana Republic and
Oh, wow.
Hyatt Hotels and Genentech, and Twitter has stuff in their offices. And she recently got me connected with Kaiser Hospital, where I did a giant entryway mural, photographic mural, for 11 feet tall by 56 feet long.
Oh, that's neat.
And so I get these, when I'm just losing faith, then I get a little breadcrumb, a little bit of work that comes in that's interesting, and I feel like as artists, I think we want to have our work seen.
Enjoyed.
And we want it functioning in the world, and it just completes the circle. So it's not to say that these jobs are the end-all, but I always feel good when I do get something that says, hey, we see you. I also shot for a winery up in Napa called Opus One, really high-end winery, and it's amazing they chose me because I really am sort of a country photographer out here. I'm out on the coast, and they saw something in my work, and they hired me for the whole year to just document the workings of the winery and the nature, and that was an amazing experience. And I still do work for them. I'm connected with them. So I've had some great opportunities to do really high-end work, and I sell my individual art pieces to people, and slowly working on a book here. I did one book for the water district out here about the local creek we have here that has salmon spawning in it, and so they're doing restoration. So they gave me a grant to do a book on that. That was a great experience. So these successes are sort of lead you on, and right now I'm sort of in a little bit of a dry spell, but I'm teaching. I've got other little things going. It seems like it goes almost seasonal, where it will pick up again, and I'll get busy doing something, and that's when the faith comes in. I think everybody has it, even if you're in what seems to be a secure job. There's a little bit of a voice in the back that goes, is it going to be here next year?
Yeah.
So I don't think everybody's free from it, but I am
probably part of being an entrepreneur. Being on your own as well. So
that's exactly right. So the arts is just a little bit more in your face because you're the sole motivator of making the art happen in the face of the world saying there's no reason to do it.
Yeah.
It's a funny dance, but it's the most rewarding thing. I can't even imagine what retiring would be like. I plan to do this creativity for the rest of my life. It's just, there's nothing better than to just live that sort of life.
Well, and I think that's how you found your passion, is that it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like something you have to retire from, that it's something that you could do forever and be just as happy as you were the first day that you started it.
That's right. And a lot of my instructors, they're like Linda Connor is one of my instructors from the Art Institute. She's still going strong, and she makes beautiful work. And I'm not sure how old she is now, but she's older than me and just a fine artist. And there's other photographers I studied with too there that are still going. And it's good to have that kind of community to see sort of the lineage. And also, the one thing about art school that was great is that, and I'm sure it happens in other schools, but there was a group of us that sort of gathered together that had similar styles of photography and appreciated nature. And we are still all in contact,
That is really neat.
And it's just, I think people have many experiences at art school, but that was mine because I was so committed, and it was such a big life change that I got everything I could get out of it, and part of that was the connections I made.
Well, and I'm sure the connections and networking are just as important for your industry to get your stuff out and to be known as anywhere else. So, yeah. That's
exactly right. And that comes down to, anybody younger out there that might be listening, is that along the lines of those connections, and it's really important to show up, and it's really important to show up with just good energy and a can-do, want-to-do energy.
Reliability.
It doesn't, because you're an artist doesn't mean you get to just kind of hang out, which you can, but, if you want the juice, you got to, really show up and bring the gusto, and people, it's fun when you get a crew of people together that are doing a certain work, or even if you're just working with a model or something, if everybody brings the good energy, it's really, it's fulfilling.
It can be fun. So what are some other, we've talked about quite a few different personal habits that help to make you successful, but can you pinpoint any others? You have reliability and work and
work ethic.
Energy.
And I think it's just, I'm not sure how to speak the word, but I would say that some sort of spiritual component, which I think in art goes hand in hand because that faith plays a part. And, there's a lot of contemplative aspects of art making that forces you to think about why you're here on Earth. And, I've come to the conclusion that my job as an artist, because I've wanted to have some sort of big answer and some sort of grander understanding, but it's come down to that the world shows me death and destruction, and my job is to just reflect beauty back on itself. It's
That's
simple as
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Because if I try to look any further, I fall flat too much. And I feel like I do show its beauty back on itself, and people respond. And it's the place that, so I think the habit of sort of whatever it is, I happen to sort of tap more into the sort of Buddhist teaching, sort of Buddhish, and I get the sort of nuggets of information that I need to sort of find meaning with balance in my life.
Well, and you talked a little bit about finding that creativity, and sometimes you have to, like with the Buddhist teaching, you really have to meditate and to tap into that energy. Do you feel like that kind of comes from there too?
Yeah, well, I think that art making is really allied with Buddhism. There's something, it's a meditative process. It's the place of getting to where there's not much thought going on, as little as possible, and you're just tapping into pure response to the sort of getting into the flow. I hate to use these words because they can be kind of thrown away, but, getting into the flow of what's going on and to be present for that without too much thought and too much holding of it. And then also that faith comes in of just trusting that what you're experiencing has value. And I'm blown away so many times where, my intention, like I said, to go out and photograph that eagle. Actually, I don't go out and photograph eagles, but, to go out and photograph that eagle and to not have it happen and then be okay with that and to sort of be in flux, and I will be able to just flow into the next scenario and to go with that. That's where I end up with the best results.
Yeah.
And I come back with something and it's like, wow, that was great. And that's actually a skill. I can't emphasize that enough, that is actually a huge skill that I've realized that I've learned, is how to wait for it and wait for the opening and wait for the time when your mind is in your control and your ego has gotten out of the way, so that the essence of what you're seeing, it's almost like when I go into a forest, it looks like it's confusion. There's chaos of all the branches and, that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees. It's like you go in there, it's just confusing. And then as I sit and as I spend time, I start to see where the animal paths are, where the deer have gone. I start to see, where a nest is in the trees. I start to see where the water is coming down. And I start to break it down into sort of these elements. And all of a sudden it becomes familiar and it's less chaotic. And then all of a sudden that's when I start seeing. It's almost like a spark. It just goes blink and everything opens up.
That's interesting.
And I almost can't own it at that point. If I say, okay, now I'm ready, I see it, they can't do that either. It's almost like, if I can relate another quick thing, there was a show called Kung Fu back in the 70s, and there's a master and a student, and the student was asking, what is, love, or what is God? And the master says, well, you can't look directly into the sun. You just have to feel the warmth on your shoulder to know it's there.
Yeah.
So in essence, you can't look directly at the creativity. You just have to just sort of feel that little tickling of poetry that's happening and then respond. This is probably the place that I'm most excited about in my creativity right now. I feel like I've arrived at this place now. I shouldn't speak it because it could shut down at any time. But I'm just sort of overjoyed when it's happening, and it seems to be happening a lot. And again, to throw out another word, I think it's in line with things like with love and flow.
Peace,
and
maybe.
Sort of, it's creativity, and it's really getting the ego out of the way. Believe me, I have a big one. So it's been a battle to sort of tell it to say, okay, I hear you, I know you're there, but egos serve us for a good reason, but it's for art making, it's good to get it out of the way and to sort of be in the dance of what's going on in front of you and be open. That's the challenge. It really is a challenge. And I imagine, I have to say, I do some education, and I'm not a full-time teacher, so the teachers that are in it all the time, for them to stay in that place when they can, man, that's masterful. That's incredible, because it's not an easy place to maintain when you've got all the have-tos and the testings and the times for schedule and all that stuff knocking on your door. So when they have those moments of flow and creativity and ahas where the students open up, it's an amazing skill to do that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do you have, you kind of talked about not retiring, but do you have any long-term goals for yourself? Or?
I'm doing retirement on the installment plan. I've been retired for a long time, but I have to work sometimes, and then I have time to go drift at the beach. But no, I don't, unfortunately. it really is making art.
Like, well, you've talked about trying to just flow with it, I mean, is that
Yeah,
kind of...
I want to do more teaching. I've just started it's in conversation now. I've had a studio out here in Point Reyes for a long time where I've taken people on excursions, and I want to do more of that. So I've started I've just started the website. I haven't started the organization yet, but it's going to be the Point Reyes Center for Photography, where
That'll be
people
interesting.
can come. Yeah, there'll be teaching there. There'll be guest lectures. There'll be photo excursions, shows, and of course I'll have my own work. I have to say it's a little bit of self-support there.
Well, but it's also showing like your capabilities or possibilities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I need something like that because I've been working at it. I don't want to just throw that out, but also to have student shows. But it's been something that's been really going around in my mind, and there's people that are interested in finding support for it, and maybe some grants and things like that. So that's sort of on the plate because I'm looking for something to set up that will be sort of a landing place and a home. But until then, I've been doing little open studios and doing some work, and I shoot for architects, and I do very few weddings now, but I'll do a couple this year, and shoot for the winery, which I'm enjoying. I just finished a book sample for them, so I'm hoping they're going to order those. So it always blows me away that what comes around from around the corner, because just when I think there's nothing, there's something shows up, and it's like, oh yeah,
yeah, that's where that faith comes in. That it's going to continue.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice or encouragement for anyone who's just starting out, maybe other artists or teachers? You talked about having to get your ego out of the way. Is there any way you can shorten that learning curve a little?
No. No, life has to do its thing on you. You have to get humbled a few times. Unfortunately, I think that's part of though there's some kids I meet that are just fully ready to go and are such sweethearts and have such good parents and a good sort of direction that I'm always, in some ways I'm warmly jealous. It's just like I feel, God, I wish I had that as a kid because they're very lucky. But the depth that you find through having to go through the struggles is where the good stuff is. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this life throws all sorts of stuff at us, but if you stay with it, the wisdom comes and your art gets better. Your teaching, I imagine, gets better, and it's just what life does. In some ways, there's no separation. It is, I'm feeling less and less that I'm an artist, that I'm just becoming more human as I go along. I just become, and that's I think patience is important, but when you're younger, you got to just bring that crazy energy to stuff. It's just the way it is. And, we're on fire, and you got to work that muscle and try everything, have fun and have the experiences. And then as things settle down, and those will come, you can draw on those as you get older. And I have incredible memories and lessons that I've learned that, from 30 years ago that are finally sort of coming up to the surface. I'm going, oh man, that was amazing. Almost like a different person did that. I realize what element of that plays into my art now.
Yeah.
Or into my beat.
The experience.
So the shorter answer is no, I have no advice.
Well, and I do think I've taught a little bit of acting, and I've seen kids that they have a lot of life experience. They tend to take on that character a little bit better than the kids that really don't, that they can't relate to it. So maybe it's a little bit like that with art, with photography and stuff that sometimes you have to have those life experiences to really find the depth and all that. So, do you have any favorite?
It's one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, art is just not doing the trick, because we can all learn the trick of how to make the good painting or make the good photograph or play the good instrument. But it's another thing to have the depth, and that comes from experience and commitment.
Yeah, and that's where it starts to become really beautiful. So do you have a favorite book or resource that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, it changes as I change, I have to say. I was just reading a book on wabi-sabi, the Japanese sort of ideas of design from the tea houses, and looking at something by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's also a Buddhist teacher about love. Things that are, when I was younger, I was blown away by reading The Fountainhead, and just thinking, wow, that's me, I'm going to take over the world, and I'm my individual self, and so it changes all the time. Resources, for me, my resource, definitely my wife, who I love dearly, and my dog right now, who I also love. And then getting out in nature and my friends.
Those human connections, maybe.
The connection, and nature is been my ally my whole life. I think the answer to that is find what is your ally, and then immerse yourself in it. I need to get in the ocean and surf, or go for a hike on the beach, or go in the woods and see an owl. I lived in San Francisco for 10 years, and I'm done with it. It was interesting in itself, but it's too busy. It's too much stuff. But if you thrive there's people that thrive in the city. Well, then give yourself that. Find the resources that feed you, and hopefully it's good stuff, and it's not the stuff that's destructive. Some of that stuff feels like it feeds you, but it doesn't truly feed you. So find the things that are authentic and feed you well, and immerse yourself in that, and then just go to town.
That's great. So if you could leave a legacy, what do you think that would be?
Well, I think it's Mother Teresa said, we can't do great things in this life, but we can do small things with great love.
Yeah.
And so if I could leave with anything, it would be, I want my legacy to say that I was a loving person and that I was kind.
That's great.
That would be it.
So before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words? And then tell us how we can get in touch with you. I've actually looked at Todd's website, and he does have some fantastic things on there. So, give us your contact information.
Yeah. So Todd Pickering, and it's toddpickering.com, 2 Ds, Todd. And my email is todd@toddpickering.com. So that's also on my website. And you can also phone me. Anybody wants to just call and chat, 707-548-6231. Or if they want to come up to Point Reyes and do a workshop and come out and go on a hike and learn photography and talk about art and talk about nature. I love to do that. I'm affordable, so it's doable for people. And there's plenty of places to stay up here.
Well, you might be seeing me and my whole family, because that sounds super fun. So.
Come on down. That would be a blast. Yeah, so, I think the last thing I said is kind of it. I think the world just needs more goodness and more creativity. And you talk about education. We just need to keep working on that. And there's a lot of good people and a lot of good ideas like yourself that are trying to figure out this puzzle of how to make the world a better place. And I think it is, you just pick what you love and do that, and do it the best that you can with kindness. And
that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Hallelujah.
Well, and when you go ahead and start you've talked about trying to start a school up there, give me a call.
Yeah.
I'd really like to talk about that and see how that's going, and the reception and all that. So, all right.
Well, it's got a little link to it on my website, so if you go there at the bottom of the page, there's a little link to that. And it's just started. I just got the URL and set that up, so it was just to make sure I had that. But that's the Point Reyes Center for Photography.
A Point Reyes. I'll have to look that up. Okay.
But well, it's been wonderful talking with you.
Yeah, you too. And thanks so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Todd Pickering, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Also, be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list so you can receive notifications for our weekly audio blog, The Spark. We would love to have you join our program. Do so by going to the scheduling tab and become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website, theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Google+. Get our audio content on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.